Over the past decade of my career, I've had the privilege of working with thousands of college students across the globe, hiring hundreds of interns at some of America's biggest tech companies. Like most people, I've experienced plenty of ups and downs, personally, professionally, and through it all, I've spent countless hours reviewing thousands of resumes, building interactive programs, creating recruiting strategies with one mission in mind, and that is to help make the lives of young professionals easier, better, personally and professionally, so ultimately they can win in corporate America and unlock their full potential. Thank you for joining the Career Hacks podcast. Excited about this conversation because, like me, Yuliya is someone who gets geeked about early career talent, recruiting, and the state of the workforce, both at a micro and macro level. The intention of today's conversation is simple: to bring you into our worlds and understand, how do we talk about the world of university recruiting? What's changing? What should students care about? What should career services do to prep their students in a world where AI is at the forefront of everything? So before we dive in, please join me in welcoming my longtime colleague, Yuliya, to the show. Awesome. Well, Yuliya, it has been forever. It's so good to see you. Thank you for being willing to join us on the Career Hacks podcast.
Thank you for having me. It is so fun to hang out with you.
It's been a while. Well, for the folks who are meeting you for the first time, I would love if you can just give them a quick introduction, tell them your name, where you're from, and a little bit about your career journey.
Happy to. My name is Yuliya Mikhailovska. I saw you did not try to pronounce that, so I'm a bit upset about that. But my name is Yuliya Mikhailovska. I have focused on early career talent for the bulk of the last dozen years. Originally from Ukraine, moved here when I was 7, grew up in Brooklyn, completely killed the Brooklyn accent. And I would love to talk about how that impacts interviews sometimes. And I love supporting early career people and getting the right role for them. And I've done it from 2 different angles. I did it both from a recruiting angle, and I've worked at companies where I recruit early career talent, both at the graduate and undergraduate level. And I've also spent a good chunk of my career in career coaching and helping people make career decisions, being their career therapist, and also hoping to open kind of their ideas of what's even possible. Love doing this work. I've had the privilege of working at 2 amazing venture capital funds, Greylock based in the Bay Area and Lair Hippo based in New York. And that exposure and the breadth of the kinds of sectors and stages and businesses was really like eye-opening because now, I'm not scared to hear like quantum computing. But before I was like, B2B commerce, I get that. Everything else, what? So that was really helpful, those 2 funds, in getting the breadth of their portfolio companies in different sectors. And then I've also worked in-house at companies like Base 10 and Clay, The Muse, et cetera. And then I've worked at 2 universities, Stanford University, of which I'm a graduate, and Columbia University, of which I'm not a graduate yet. Who knows?
That's awesome. Well, again, I'm super excited to dive into the conversation because I think we both share that similar passion of really just wanting to help students land the right role that works for them. So let's get directly into that piece of the conversation. So at a high level, walk us through, in your opinion, what does a good intern candidate look like to you?
The $1 million question, right? Look, I think the reality is getting an early career job and being an intern candidate is a lot like college admissions. And I remember back when I was applying to colleges and listening to what they were saying of what do we look for, it was like, we can fill this class 30, 40 times with the same GPA, same et cetera. And that was terrifying when I was applying. And I think it's also terrifying to a lot of candidates because they know how competitive it is. The market, regardless of which numbers you're watching or not, you know the anecdotes. It's extremely hard to get a job. It's really hard to stand out. It feels like some people are getting 10 competing offers and really aggressive offers, and other people who have the right credentials are getting no offers. They're not even hearing back sometimes. And one thing I tell people when I work with them one-on-one, when they're come to me frustrated of like, I did the right things, I don't know what's happening, I give them advice around like what actually recruiting or interviewing at any place really is. Look, I think at the bare minimum, you need to have the competence. You have to have the right major. If a company asks for a major in X, 95% chance they need that. Like, they're not like trying to waste your time.
Right.
Competence. But there are a lot of competent people in the world. Right. For sure. I think once you get through that resume screen and like check, good grades. And like, by the way, grades still matter. I mean, I still care because there's so much grade inflation that if you can't get me to a good number around what you did, I'm a little bit concerned because I've interviewed people with 4.0s from top schools and they've on the next round then don't do well. So I'm like, okay, at the very least, the grades need to be good because that's not even enough signal for the next
Understood,
thing.
yeah.
So competence is just like have you done some of the relevant roles?
That's the bare minimum,
Do
the baseline.
you have strong academic performance?
Okay.
Are you involved with groups that are relevant? But look, I think once you get through the competence thing and once you start going through whether take-home assignments or technical interviews, whatever else, the thing that I think actually matters and who gets hired in these ultra-competitive processes is two other things that people completely like dismiss or don't think about. And that is, do I trust you? And do I like you? And those are really difficult things to be aware of because trust and likability, that's a can of worms, right? That's a huge can of worms. But I think those are things that can be coached and taught. When people say, I keep getting to final rounds and something's not clicking, like, okay, you're obviously good. You can do the job. You're doing something to sow. I don't know this word.
What do you mean?
Sow doubt?
What do you mean?
It's like, this is why I should not be trying to use fancy words. It's a three-letter word. It's when you put in doubt, like sow a seed, I think, or sow.
Sow a seed.
Sow a seed.
Yes, sowing a seed. Yes.
You immigrated later, but your English is better. That's amazing because this is the word I wanted to use. But look, if you say something in an interview, or it's like an off remark, or in my case, I used to have a really strong accent. People want to feel comfortable around you. There's a reason they always say like, oh, who will I be next to in the airport and love like that 5-hour commute? I'm not saying it's the right thing. I'm not saying it's the right characteristic at all. I'm saying there are standards and norms that people use in the workplace. And there is a reason why so many companies and places hire the same model of person. And there's a reason why some people who have amazing credentials really struggle. And I think, again, once you hit that competence bar, then it's a game of trust and likability.
I agree, 150%. I think I've even experienced some of that in my own career, right? Like
me too.
Yeah.
We learn these lessons and people don't tell us why. So it's if someone actually gives you that feedback and they're being honest around, hey, here's why I think you're turning somebody away from you. It might hurt to hear it, but you have to listen. And you don't have to agree with it. I think I mentioned to you before this started recording, like, I have a really complicated last name. I've actually missed interview invites because back before all the integrations, recruiters had to like send you, and they would send it to the wrong, I have 12 letters in my name. They would send it to the wrong, they would miss one consonant, and boom, there goes my interview. And I had a manager tell me like, you should really consider Americanizing your name. And that was very painful to hear because, I mean, how do you even respond to that?
Yeah.
But then I thought about it, and I've since like mentioned to some people, listen, like, your resume might be giving these flags that are not actually real flags, but people are so biased, they're going to assume things. For example, let's say your resume has a lot of international experience and you have a name like mine. They're not going to ask you, hey, are you authorized to work here?
They're just going to make the assumption.
They're going to make the assumption. And you know what? There are so many resumes there, then why not hire Julia Michelson instead of Yuliya Mikhailovska? No, truly. And this is like, by the way, I have a right? Complicated name. But even I sometimes like double click. I'm like, Yuliya, like, of course they have, STEM, OPT, whatever, like, but it's just the way humans are wired. And I think not acknowledging that this is something we all hold inside. And that's, recruiters, by the way, not a very diverse group normally, right?
Tell me about it.
I mean,
that's why I decided to continue to doing this work, because I wanted to be able to represent and advocate for students that people who don't look like me don't feel drawn to, right? Like they might have to hit a quota, but like it's a difference when you have someone in the room who can really advocate for folks that look like them. So I'm 100% aligned with that.
I love that. And that's why I was drawn to it too, right? I went on a date the other day and the person's like, you could have gone to medical school. You were a good student. I was like, that's not actually what I think makes a difference. I think what makes a difference is opening one door for somebody. And then you're not going to open every door, but that first door needs to open. And it's kind of ironic in a way because, yes, I've been affiliated with great institutions and I've been extremely lucky to attend boarding school and to go to Stanford. These are very privileged places. And I'm happy to help people who go, like, I will always take alumni interest and whatnot.
Absolutely.
But my favorite placements have been when I opened the door for somebody from a school that no one's heard of, but their resume showed that, hey, in light of the resources they had available to them, they crushed it. And like, that's what I love to see. Like, if you give somebody an inch, did they run with that?
We could spend a lot of time going so much deeper into this. No, this is great.
That is, similar drivers.
Absolutely. But I think I would like to kind of peel the onion back a little bit more, right? Because as we talk about just how challenging the world of work is now, how dense the job market is, and then you add the layer of AI in the mix, right? Yes, a candidate can stick out in a process when they get to interview around likability and things that you mentioned, right? But before we even get to that point, I think, in my opinion, right, like we posted a job a couple weeks ago and it got 5,000 applications in a couple of days, right?
Totally.
And I am 150% sure that many of the resumes that I saw were written by AI. Before students even get to an interview, how can they allow themselves to really stand out amongst all the noise, all the great resumes, all the great profiles that are built with AI? What is your thoughts on that? How can a student stand out in the process before they get to interview?
Yeah.
Outside of the credentials, outside of the credentials, outside of the making sure that they're hitting the basic criterias, how do they stand out now? Because everyone looks awesome on paper.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a trick question. Can I do it?
Yeah.
Because it changed how I think about jobs, like fully.
Okay.
I read it a while back when I was first graduating. So I come from an immigrant family, blue collar workers. I didn't know how this market works. I didn't know how to get a job. So I read a lot of career books and I'm happy to share a few that things stand out. But one of the things I had read was this little anecdote of, a hiring manager gets 5,000 resumes. Pile A is people with perfect GPAs and pile B is people from target schools. Which resume stack should you prioritize when you're interviewing? Well, like, what do you think?
That's a tough question. There's so many factors that could be at play here. Like, what does the business need? What school did the CEO go to? Are they on my back about, but just on impulse, I'll probably go with the stack that has the target schools. Do you want me to tell you why?
Yes, and then I'll tell you what stack I would choose. Or not what I would choose, but what actually happens.
I would probably choose the stack of target schools because I believe that there would be more breadth of types of candidates in that pool. That's probably why I would go with the target schools. What are your things?
So the thing that made my jaw drop when I read this anecdote is that, like, don't choose pile A or B, choose pile C. I'm like, what is pile C? I did not know pile C was a pile. No one talked to me about it.
I didn't have that option.
That's right. I didn't tell you about it. I didn't know about it either. Pile C is the list of 20 resumes of people who have either interned there before or were directly handed to the hiring manager. And
those referrals.
I'm not saying I like this game, but I'm saying people need to be aware of this game. And I think the more AI makes it easy to apply, the more people want it to be real. Because you could spend a lot of time interviewing someone and in reference check or in some other stage of the process, you're like, wow, something's off. If I know you and you interned for me, or you were in my sorority or fraternity, or so-and-so's whatever. I don't agree like 100% with this method, just to be very clear, because that hindered me early on.
Absolutely.
Maybe it hindered you. I don't know.
100%.
It hinders lots of people.
Yeah.
But I think people have to face the reality of what is happening in every company. And the reason it's happening is, and you have to also think of it from a business perspective. Businesses want to hire a sure thing.
Mm-hmm.
Businesses don't like to take risks.
Exactly.
Even though the risk could be much better than the sure thing.
Yeah.
And so, especially in this market where so many companies have fewer roles open, a recruiter or a hiring manager cannot mess up the fewer hires they have. Mm-hmm. Every hire actually matters more. Mm-hmm. I think on the AI front, like, use that to research, use that to practice. But the thing you can do is to actually be a human, be as human as you can, build human relationships, be memorable, follow up. Like, and not follow up and send me the same canned response from ChatGPT, because I get a lot of that. Like, I know I'm in someone's sequence. Follow up and be like, hey, here's something additional and thoughtful and well-researched to the business, or like, don't make it a funny follow-up of, hey, Yuliya, I see you like figure skating. That's not relevant to the role. Follow up and be thoughtful. And people's follow-up game is really bad. And I work a lot with students still, and I've worked with a lot of students over the years. Like 95% of people just don't follow up. And it's absurd to me. Because I think especially if you have fewer opportunities overall available to you, your follow-up game better be A+++.
So the follow-up game, playing the back channels, having the community, the connections.
Building that community.
Building the network.
And having a community that's not, like, I feel so lucky to have grown up in New York City, but I know a lot of people don't live in New York City. New York City is the kind of place that you can build community a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. But I think there are so many opportunities on campus, at work, anywhere, to build relationships. My first lesson in getting a job through a referral is like the craziest story.
Tell me, what is the story?
So my dad's a handyman.
Okay.
He works in various high rises. And he was hanging a painting for a woman that he had done various handyman work for before. Okay. And my dad now, like, great guy, does not remember at all what I studied, where I went to school. Like, he can't even pronounce, like, but he was asking this woman about her. He's a very friendly guy. He was asking her about herself. She mentioned she did something international. It wasn't clear. And then she asked, like, tell me about you. He's like, I have a daughter, Stanford, international something. Like, did not even know I'm not saying this out of disrespect. He just doesn't remember these things, right? Yeah. Anyhow, she gave him her card. She's like, if she's looking for an internship, have her reach out. And I was having a really hard time finding a junior year internship because I was studying abroad. So my dad sent me this thing. He's like, I don't know what this is, but this lady reached out.
What'd you do? Did you follow up?
For sure I did. Do you know where she worked?
Where?
The World Health Organization.
Oh, wow.
Dream internship for international relations. Not only have I followed up, I got that internship. Yeah. I did that internship. I gave it 150%. I made some amazing friends. That manager had invited me to her wedding. Like, if someone opens a door for me, I will not mess it up. And I will follow up. I will be extra. Like, you have to go above and beyond someone else's. But all to say, like, that internship, by the way, was never posted. And do you know how many people want to work at the World Health Org or the UN? A lot, right? A lot, yeah. And I was extremely lucky. But I always share this story because so many people think, oh, you only have a network if you are born into privilege. You only have a network if so-and-so. I mean, I have friends from college who, yes, I went to a great school, but there's a lot of kids at college who are also first-gen low-income students. Mm-hmm. Maybe their mom was a cleaning lady for somebody or was a babysitter. People forget about those relationships. There's a million places to think about relationships and where to build them and how to build them. And it's not always as obvious as a school. Mm-hmm. And especially if you're not in a target school, you have to be even smarter about those relationships.
150%. I appreciate you sharing that. We were talking a little bit before we started recording about this viral TikTok video, yeah. Right? To give the listeners a quick insight, go on TikTok and look up 120 fully remote versus 240 in office, and you'll get the context behind this video. So I want to hear your thoughts because I have my own thoughts about the video.
Yeah.
I think it's great content,
Yeah.
but I don't necessarily agree that I would take the job for 240. And I can understand why a Gen Z wouldn't. But I'm curious to hear from you as someone in the university recruiting space. Like, what are you seeing that shifting, and why would a student choose a $120,000 job opposed to 240 so they can be fully remote?
It's so funny because I would choose a $50,000 job that's great in person over any. I love in person. So,
Okay.
But everyone has their own vibe,
Of
right?
course,
Or
of
their own
course.
preferences. But I do understand why people would choose one over the other. And one of the most kind of aha moments I had in the past year was when I heard from Susie Welch. She's a professor at NYU, and she's done some really interesting work about values and how values across different generations are shifting. And employers, especially employers of top tech, finance, et cetera, kind of businesses, employers want someone who's work-centric. That's one of the values she discusses. Now, millennials, I guess you and I still count as millennials,
Yeah, I
right?
guess
We
we're
do.
in the bucket.
We actually do have work centrism pretty high up there. She goes through 16 different values. She's written some really interesting op-eds for Wall Street Journal. So I certainly recommend people not only check out the op-eds and understand the macro trends, but I also really recommend doing these assessments that she has on her site, because it's great to have an objective sense of where are your values and how they're aligning or not aligning. And I can talk about assessments separately too, because I think there's a few things that help a lot in early career talent figuring out what to do. But her assessment is one of my new favorite ones, the Values Bridge. So she talks about how work centrism is what a lot of employers want. They always want that. Why would you not want somebody
best for their
whom
business.
work is the center of their life? Now, for Gen Z, that's in the bottom 16. Not like number 16. It might be number 16, but it's in the bottom. Now, you have, let's say, 1 or 2% of the Gen Z population for whom work centrism is still at the very top, and all the employers are competing over that. But why is it not higher up for everyone else? And why would people rather take the remote job that pays less? And that's because a very top value for Gen Z is eudaimonia and like having fun, joy, etc. And you could see it as, are they spoiled? I don't think they're spoiled. I think Gen Z has seen so much. We have seen a lot in our lifetime. Gen Z was coming of age or still young when their parents were losing their houses in the Great Recession. Gen Z has seen many wars. Gen Z has seen a lot of political upheaval. Gen Z is just not trying to kill themselves for a job.
Gen Z's not with the bullshit. Just call it what it is.
But Gen Z is extremely smart. I mean, I actually, I'm sure there's studies behind this, but like, I really do think each generation gets even more powerful and stronger. And like, they're so smart. But I think Gen Z is aware of what's going on. But that being said, I also think given where the market is at, people are still taking like strong jobs. But if you have a choice and it's the choice between a job that's at home and a bit chiller, or a job that's in an office that's not as fun, then it's very clear what choice you make. And it's really kind of guess timely because I was self-employed last year working for a variety of great companies. And I told you, I love in person. And I think for, especially when you're younger, you learn things in person and those micro interactions that it's hard to get anywhere else. So I love that. And I was catching up with a former, not direct colleague, but somebody I had worked with. And you know what she told me?
What's that?
When she was like, would you be open to joining something full time? I was like, I was not sure. I was kind of like, maybe, but like, I also love what I'm doing now. She's like, come work here. It'll be really fun. No, but that fun sold me, right? Because at the end of the day, we just went through COVID. We went through a lot of additional global and local challenges. And people want fun. And maybe because so many companies haven't yet figured out how to invest in fun in the workplace in the right way, people are still choosing remote. But I think companies that are going to have a unique in-person approach, they're going to win. Because you know what? It's fun to have lunch with your colleagues. It's fun to get drinks after work. It's fun to go to the holiday party. And I do think colleagues that have more of that connective tissue, you do better work when you are having a good time. So I think it's a great viral hit that you shared with me, but I think it's talking about the majority of companies, and the companies that are going to win, they're going to figure out how to make that in-office experience so good that they might even not always be the highest offer, but people want to work there because they want to be happy.
That's interesting, because I listened to the video, and my takeaway from this was, I think Gen Z is giving us all the feedback that we need. As people who are going out and hiring these young folks, we need to acknowledge the fact that our values are different. You just touched on it, right? And I think the companies who get ahead of understanding that and prioritize Gen Z's values in how they execute or what's in their offer, I think they will find long-term more success. That's just my opinion. And I like being in person, but what I like more is freedom and flexibility.
Absolutely.
So I'll come into the office a couple days a week, but if I decided that I wanted to work in Zimbabwe for a week, like, if you give me that freedom and flexibility, I want that job, and I'll take it for $120K less.
And by the way, that top 1 or 2% that everyone's competing at, they're self-aware.
Yeah.
They know they can get a job anywhere. They also know, I've been awed at how many really top tier early career people I've met who have already taken sabbaticals. Because they know, they're aware that the market, it's hard, but they're an amazing candidate. They have experience, they have some confidence, whatever. And so I think, to your point, like, people have choices.
Yeah.
And companies sometimes forget that.
In your world, how often do you find yourself talking to hiring managers or hiring leaders about shifting the recruiting strategy to cater to Gen Z? Because I'll start. I've never heard a hiring manager ask me about, how do we think about this for the new generation of worker? No one has ever said that. What are you hearing?
It's funny. I would love to have that conversation. I geek out on this. I love this. But no, I think people are just so busy and so there's so little time for strategy and just like pause. Don't run, right? So no, we're not having conversation like that every day. But I also think, everyone has a different way that they recruit. And I like to recruit by diving into motivations. That's something that was taught to me by a very dear colleague at Greylock, John Delaney. And he really talked about understanding someone's motivations, not just the career story, but like, why did you go from A to B to C? And what I've learned over so many years of working with candidates is that the earlier on in the process, that's when the two of you are the most honest with each other. That's when you'll say, oh, I took that job for that reason, and now I'm looking to leave for that reason.
Right.
And here's what I want next, right? Now, the closer you get to offer, the more both of you are like really trying to tell each other what you want to hear. So it's really important early on to be clear about the motivations. And by the way, it's also a reminder to candidates that every single conversation matters. Even if it feels like a very relaxed conversation, people are trying to figure out why. Why did you do the things that you did?
Agreed.
And so when it comes to aligning on what are someone's, like shaping the career strategy, I think people want to be seen as individuals. I think there's parts of career and recruiting strategy that are scalable and maybe vast, but when a candidate feels like the role is the perfect fit for them, they're going to say yes. And they're going to really want it. And so as a recruiter, you have to figure out what matters to them, match them to the right team to the extent that you can.
That makes sense. So I guess the other question that I want to kind of throw at you is, now that we're seeing that the workforce is shifting, right? What is a piece of advice that you would give to, because we both come from like a career services, higher education background. What advice would you give to someone who is preparing students for the workforce? I mean, we're doing it quite often, but like, what is the thing that they should know in this new market that they should really be preparing students for?
I have very strong thoughts on career services. I
have those as well.
I'm not going to go into them, but I think one of the biggest challenges and a big disservice that happens in career services is you have people giving young people advice about careers who have only been in academia. And the reality is people with access are going to get advice from other places, not just career services. But people without access are going to take what career services is saying as gospel.
Exactly.
And you cannot tell somebody, I think it's inappropriate to tell a first-gen low-income student to just follow your passions. Because yes, that's true, but you also have to make sure you're following the reality. You know, I've seen, and I've worked with some tremendous students who are artists and doing amazing work, and they're like, there's no room for error. Like they were top in every level, and they got what they wanted for sure. But for a lot of people, following your passions means you're studying something that has little market relevance, and then sadly, it's not translating. So when it comes to career services and career advice and whatnot, I think it's really it's extremely important that people do their own diligence. Think about, where is someone's advice coming from? Has this person worked in the industry that you want to work?
Career services, we love you, by the way.
We do.
There's no beef.
No beef. I've done it twice. And I always, you know Lindsay Pollock?
Of course I know Lindsay Pollock.
Love Lindsay Pollock. Yeah. And she and I always joke, not joke, but like, it's very hard. But we always say, when I retire or like right about to retire, I love career. Like, it's the best
The goal
thing.
is to go back to career services for me.
Absolutely. It's so gratifying. Unfortunately, universities pay nothing for career services.
Right.
But like, yes, of course I love them. I hope
I just don't want anyone watching this to be like, we're not kidding.
No, I love it. I know why people don't go into career services. There's just no money in it. And you have to live in New York, San Francisco. Yeah. Life's expensive.
Exactly.
But people have to be really mindful of where they're reading advice. You know, people get some great stuff on Reddit. They also get some terrible stuff on Reddit. You have to have different data points. One of the best things one of my mentors did for me my junior year of college, when I was just confused what to do, because yes, I studied international relations and languages, but there's so many other careers. She said, just start small. Don't start thinking about the, occupational and career handbook with 5,000 careers. Pick the first 3 things you want. Meet 3 people in each of those 3 things. Figure out hypotheses and why you might be interested in that. Figure out the reality of that. Steve Dalton, who wrote the 2-Hour Job Search, he has a great framework in his book, The 2-Hour Job Search, about the tiara method. It's some really thoughtful questions for informational interviews. But like, just do your research. Don't rely on one source of truth, because that source of truth might be a great person, but they are not like informed enough about what they're informing you on. Also, the market shifts fast.
It changes very fast. Yep.
It shifts fast. And so somebody who did that job even 20 years ago, it might not be relevant now. And so you always have to think about, who am I getting advice from? But I think if you can, get as many sources of advice as you can, and then use your own critical thinking to figure out what to follow.
That's great advice. So as we close things out, my last question for you is, if you had to bet on one skill that continues to remain valuable, no matter what happens in the world of AI, quantum computing, none of that, right? What is that one skill that will still be valuable for students forever?
It's together. This one skill that I'll say.
Okay.
I just don't know if there's one word for it, but it's a mix of storytelling and sales.
Let's unpack that. Tell me why.
Well, there's been a lot actually very recently around the power of storytelling and how many companies are looking for that. You need to be able to sell your skills, to sell your story. You need to be human. You need to be memorable. Technical skills change really fast.
And you can learn those.
You can.
Over time, yeah.
The ability to connect with somebody, the ability to build trust, the ability to be clear, concise, to speak in a way that you're not just heard, but understood. That's a mix of, I think, of storytelling, and they go hand in hand. And it's funny because a lot of people in my sector, in tech, they all want to be PMs because they think product is the core of the business, right? But I got my career started in sales, and I think that was a great decision because guess what? Your product can be really good, but if you can't sell it, no one cares, and you go out of business. So I think You want to be as close as possible to the core of what drives a business. And in tech, at least, those are two things: product. So be an engineer, be a product designer, and sales. Because if you can't drive that revenue, that's going to be hard. And by the way, I know this is very meta, but as recruiters, we're doing sales.
Absolutely. Every
right?
single day.
So that one skill, long story short, I'm not demonstrating that skill well right now, but that one skill is that storytelling with a sales angle of how do you get things moving forward? And there's a professor at the GSB named Matt Abrams, has a fantastic book I recommend to every new grad. Think Faster, Talk Smarter. And he has so many great frameworks for how to actually tell a good story, whether it's in an interview or other situations.
I love that. That is very sound advice. Yuliya, thank you so much for joining us on the Career Hacks podcast. It's good to catch up with you, and I cannot wait to have you on the next one.
Thank you. It's so great.
Awesome.
Thank you.